You checked your bank account this morning. The number didn't move you. It's fine. It's always fine. Not bad. Not great. Just fine. Now here's what you don't know. That number you dismissed, the one that felt unremarkable, is telling a story you haven't learned to read yet. Because here's the uncomfortable truth about building real wealth. It doesn't feel like anything. There's no confetti, no notification, no moment where the math taps you on the shoulder and says, "Congratulations, you're ahead." It feels like nothing, and nothing feels like failure. So let's fix that. 7 signs you're building quiet wealth, even if it doesn't feel like it. And the final sign is the one almost nobody believes, even when the numbers are sitting right in front of them. We've been trained to recognize wealth by what we can see. The car, the kitchen renovation, the vacation photos. But the wealth that actually matters, the kind that compounds, the kind that gives you options, the kind that means you don't have to take a job you hate. That wealth is invisible. It doesn't post on Instagram. It doesn't arrive with a receipt. And because it's invisible, most people who are building it feel like they're falling behind. You see a coworker buy a house while you're still renting. You see a friend upgrade their car while yours hits 120,000 miles. You see the numbers in your checking account hover around the same range, month after month. What you don't see, the gap between what they earn and what they keep. What you don't see, your own net worth ticking upward, silently, quarter after quarter. So here's what's actually happening. Let's start with the math. According to the Federal Reserve's most recent survey of consumer finances, the median American household has a net worth of roughly $193,000. But that number is misleading, because for households under 35, the median is just $39,000. For households 35 to 44, it's about $135,000. Now open your own numbers. If your net worth, assets minus debts, has increased over the last 12 months, you are building wealth. Full stop. Even if the increase felt small, even if it was mostly automated contributions you barely noticed, even if your checking account looks roughly the same as it did last year. Because here's what's happening under the surface. Every dollar you invest is buying a small piece of future income, a dividend that reinvests, an index fund share that compounds, a retirement contribution that gets matched. You don't feel that growth because it's designed to be boring. The most effective wealth-building strategy in history, low-cost index funds, automated contributions, time, is also the most emotionally unsatisfying. It's the financial equivalent of watching grass grow. But the grass is growing. If your net worth is higher today than it was 12 months ago, you are not stuck. You are compounding. The machine is on. But growing net worth is only the first clue. The second sign is much harder to recognize. because it often feels exactly like failure. Here's a psychological trap that catches almost everyone. When you look at someone else's life, you see their spending. When you look at your own life, you see your saving. Your coworker who just bought the $60,000 SUV. You see the car. What you don't see, the 7-2-month loan at 7%. The $0 going into their 401k. The stress they feel every time a repair bill lands. You, meanwhile, are driving the same car you've had for 6 years. It runs fine. It's paid off. And because you're not making a $900 monthly payment, you're investing $900 a month instead. One of these paths leads to wealth. The other leads to a parking lot full of depreciation. The feeling of falling behind isn't evidence that you are behind. It's evidence that you're comparing your balance sheet to someone else's highlight reel. And the highlight reel never shows the debt column. And if the comparison trap weren't dangerous enough, the next sign has almost nothing to do with your income at all. Let's talk about the most underrated wealth metric in personal finance. It's not your salary. It's not your net worth. It's the number of months you can survive without income. The Federal Reserve's 2024 report on the economic well-being of U.S. households found that more than 1 in 3 American adults, around 37%, couldn't cover a surprise $400 expense with cash on hand. More than a third. For $400. Now consider what it means if you can cover 6 months of expenses. Not just a car repair. 6 months of rent or mortgage. Food, utilities, insurance, everything. That's not just an emergency fund. That's leverage. That's the ability to leave a toxic job without another one lined up. That's the ability to negotiate a salary from a position of, I don't need this offer. That's the ability to sleep through a recession while other people panic. If you have 6 months of expenses saved, or you're close, you are not behind. You are free. You just haven't had to use that freedom yet. But freedom isn't the strongest signal. The next one is quieter, and most people miss it completely because it looks like they stopped paying attention. There's a version of you from a few years ago who checked everything. Every morning. The checking account. The credit card balance. The investment app. Opened. Closed. Opened again. As if refreshing the screen might change the number. That version of you treated money like a patient in intensive care. Constant monitoring. Constant worry that something would go wrong if you looked away. Now, ask yourself, when was the last time you did that? If the answer is, I don't remember, that's not neglect. That's the system working. Quiet wealth runs on automation. The contribution leaves your account before you see the paycheck. The allocation is set. Low-cost index funds. Tax-advantaged accounts. Nothing clever. The dividends reinvest. The machine turns. And because the machine turns, you don't have to watch it. That's the real milestone no one talks about. Not a number on a screen, not a threshold crossed. It's the day you stop checking because you trust the math. The day your finances shift from something you manage to something that manages itself. People in uncertain financial situations often check their balances constantly because every dollar's movement matters. People who are building have the luxury of not looking because the trajectory is already set. If your money moves without you now, you didn't get careless. You got ahead. And once your finances start running without constant attention, something else begins to change. Not your money this time. Your behavior. You've heard this phrase before. You can afford it. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe it was a partner. Maybe it was your own internal voice, looking at your salary and running the monthly payment math. You can afford the bigger apartment, the nicer car, the premium vacation package. And you said no. Not because you couldn't make the payment, because you understood something the other person didn't. There's a difference between qualifying for a payment and actually building wealth. Every dollar you spend on lifestyle is a dollar that stops compounding. A $500 monthly car payment, invested instead at 7% over 30 years, becomes roughly $610,000. That's the real cost of the upgrade, not the sticker price. Everything that money would have become if you'd let it grow. Saying no to things your income says yes to is not deprivation. It's the single most reliable wealth-building behavior that exists. Most people think wealth changes what you buy. The next sign reveals something deeper. It changes how you think. Early in your financial life, you were hungry. Every market dip looked like a sale. Every new strategy sounded like an edge. You wanted to find the thing, the stock, the sector, the moment that would change everything. That hunger made sense. You were building from scratch. There was nothing to lose. But something shifted. Maybe you didn't notice when. You hear a coworker talking about a stock that doubled last quarter, and your first thought isn't, "Am I in?" It's, "That could have gone the other way." Someone pitches you on a real estate syndication, and instead of running the upside, you calculate what you'd actually lose if it went to zero. You're not less ambitious. You're more aware of what's at stake. Because here's the thing no one tells you about building wealth. The more you accumulate, the more you have to protect. A 50% drawdown on $10,000 costs you $5,000 and 6 months of contributions. A 50% drawdown on $200,000 costs you $100,000 and years of compounding you don't get back. The math changes. So does the instinct. If you've become more protective, if the idea of a big speculative bet makes you uncomfortable in a way it didn't 5 years ago, That's not timidity. That's the survival instinct of someone who has something worth keeping. The people chasing triple-digit returns are still trying to get where you already are. You're not missing out. You're defending ground you've already taken. But the final sign is the strangest of all. The math says you're ahead, and you still don't believe it. You've done this. You plugged your numbers into a calculator, current savings, monthly contributions, expected return, and the result said you're on track, maybe even ahead. And you didn't trust it. You assumed the calculator was optimistic. You assumed you'd entered something wrong. Because the number on the screen didn't match the feeling in your chest, the feeling that you're barely keeping up, that everyone else has figured out something you haven't. Here's what that feeling actually is: the gap between the math and the narrative. The math is straightforward. Compound interest doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't know what your coworkers are driving or what your friends posted this weekend. It just multiplies. The narrative, the story you tell yourself about where you stand, that's shaped by everything except the math. Comparison, anxiety, the constant stream of content telling you you're not doing enough. If the calculator says you're ahead, you're probably ahead. The math isn't lying to you. The feeling is. Quiet wealth doesn't look like wealth. That's the whole point. It looks like the same car in the driveway, the same apartment, the same routines. It looks like checking your accounts once a month instead of once a day. It looks like saying, "Not yet," to things you could technically afford. It looks like the slow, boring, unremarkable accumulation of assets over years. It looks like nothing, and nothing looks like falling behind. But if these 7 signs describe your life, if your net worth is growing, if your runway is long, if the calculator says you're on track, then you are not behind. You are building something that most people never build. Something quiet. Something durable. Something that will still be there long after the cars are traded in and the vacations are forgotten. The math is working, even if it doesn't feel like it. If this kind of breakdown helps you see your own finances more clearly, subscribe. New breakdowns regularly. Same approach. No hype.